And we are live. Hi, everybody. I've got a question for you. Have you ever wondered how attractions like theme parks, water parks, museums move beyond accommodations and truly create an inclusive experience for everybody or for everyone? And today's guest, well, first, good afternoon. I'm Sondra Shannon, CEO of Gatemaster Technology, and I want to welcome you to the show. And I'm thrilled about today's guest I have with me today. She's a very special guest. I met her at Intix in January, and her name is Dani Rose. And Dani is an award-winning accessibility advocate and the ADA coordinator who is transforming the world of cultural arts and live entertainment. Her work emphasizes not just meeting legal standards, but pushing boundaries of inclusive design and strategic planning to ensure that everyone can participate independently. And you know what sets Dani apart is her lived experience and personal investment in the cause. As a neurodivergent individual, she champions authentic representation and inclusion of people with disabilities. And today we're going to dive into how Dani's innovative approach is driving radical inclusion and why it's critical for cultural and entertainment spaces, attractions to embrace these changes. So stay tuned as we explore the inspiring journey of Dani Rose and the impact of her work on making the arts and live entertainment industry accessible to all. So let's welcome Dani to the show. Hi, Dani.
Hi. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you for being here. I'm so glad that you are here. And as I just kind of in the intro mentioned, you and I met at Intix in January, Las Vegas, and she was out on the patio. I went out for a breath of fresh air, and I met a breath of fresh air with that smile that Dani has. I didn't know very many people. It was my first time attending Intix, and I feel so grateful to have met you because we immediately hit it off. We immediately started having this amazing conversation, which I'm so excited to continue to have with you today.
Yeah,
Um,
same. Yeah, it was a really great experience meeting you. And that's, I think, what I love about Intix is the opportunity to meet people who are focused on similar things in your industry. And so, yeah, thank you so much again.
Well, and it was kind of cosmic. I don't know how many of the viewers here know. I've been working on a project with Chris Martin and Emmanuel Kelly, who is differently abled, and we have this passion project of his in creating, the world's most accessible park, right? It's a
Right.
big vision and a big plan. And so to have met you is kind of cosmic to me because this is certainly something that is near and dear to my heart and something that I feel like is a conversation that we need to be having more and more in these
Absolutely.
industries. And, before we jump in, because I know we have a lot, I actually want to ask you a question because I just saw Godzilla versus Kong, the New Empire. I don't know if you follow film. We are all film buffs here. But Kaylee Huddle is one of the actresses. She's a fourth generation deaf actress, and she's normalizing deafness in film, which is really what we're talking about here, like normalizing this. And, what I loved about it was half of the film was in sign language. Rest of
Right.
us were reading, which is the opposite for most people probably who
Exactly.
are hearing impaired, watching film. And I really loved it. I really loved it growing up. I had a friend who was deaf, and I know that at times she felt left out of the entertainment, the conversation, and things like that. And that's really what we're talking about here.
Right.
And I was curious if you'd seen that. But if the audience has seen it, highly recommend Godzilla versus Kong, the New Empire. My son loved it. I mean, this is to me, film is also an experience
Yes.
that people need to have, they need to be included in and need to be a part of. So if you haven't seen it, you should see it.
Yeah, definitely.
So Dani, I want to
Yeah,
just jump into some of the questions that we have for you, if that's okay. But
that's
and
great.
and actually, before we do, would you mind just giving the audience just your introduce yourself and let us know more about Art Reach? I think the audience would love to understand that a bit more.
Sure, yeah. Um, so, as you said, I'm an ADA coordinator, which means that I focus on evaluating and adapting spaces to create greater accessibility. And my focus is in arts and entertainment. But I come from the ticketing world. And so I know what it's like to be that frontline person, that customer service person who has to answer accessibility questions and be in the moment with a person who's trying to craft the perfect experience. And I know what that role really brings to the table in regards to what our customer journey is really about. So that's sort of my perspective at Artreach. Um, as the managing director, I work in our consulting department, and we go to arts organizations and cultural sites and evaluate what access they do have, what initiatives they are working on, and we help them create strategic accessibility plans to increase access. And so I'm out in the field pretty often with my little tape measure like Mary Poppins, checking door widths and surface areas and general circulation paths, and helping people find ways to improve what they have going on.
That's
um,
awesome.
yeah, our approach at Outreach is really unique because we center everything that we do with the disability community. So even if my tape measure says one thing, when we bring the disability community in, we ask what the experience is like, and they say that doorway is fine, then that doorway is fine. And we prioritize based on what the community actually wants and needs from a particular experience or a particular space. So that's really the focus of our work.
That's awesome. And it's
Yeah,
amazing that you guys are out there to educate people and help them figure out, because we've had this conversation. When you know better, you do better. And I think that's
exactly.
really the biggest thing here that we are dealing with is just that, if you are not touched by somebody who has these
Right.
needs, you might not just have it in your on your radar, right? And so we
Exactly.
understand. I think in general people are good and want to have everyone be included. But how do we do that?
Right. And raising that awareness. So, Outreach is a small nonprofit, but we are out everywhere we can go as much as we can, spreading the message, that awareness, so that people can just start to think differently, about what inclusion can really be like and what people really want from, these once in a lifetime thrilling experiences that we have to offer at our sites.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing too, I want to mention, I don't know if, because we don't have this conversation a lot, and I don't know if a lot of our viewers know, the economic impact of accessibility and how significant it is. There was a 2022 report. I'm sure there's probably some more updated information. If you've got that, please feel free to jump in here. But the disabled community represents 8 trillion per year in disposable income. So there is a financial impact that this can have on your organizations by being inclusive. And,
Right.
you know, Danny, we've had a little bit of this conversation. What do
Yeah.
you think about all that?
One of the statistics that I like to bring up is that if you average things out both nationally and globally, our disability community is about 25% of our population. And if you think about what 25% of your market is, or if you think about it this way, 1 in 4 people who walk through the door are going to need some sort of accommodation, right? And so the disability community is not a every once in a while kind of circumstance. Accommodating disability is an everyday circumstance. It's a part of communities and families and friendships. And I think it's important to recognize that it's not just about the spending power. It's about who you're including. When you create a trust relationship because people with disabilities have been accommodated at your site, they're going to bring their friends, they're going to bring their family, they're going to talk about it in their other community groups. And so you have the opportunity to open up your market to a whole world of people that you've never met before simply by incorporating some of these accessible features.
Yeah, and the loyalty.
Right.
The loyalty is huge. And
The relationships. Yeah.
yep.
We often talk about the people who come to our sites as fans. Imagine the fans that you create in the disability community when you're open, accommodating, receptive, and understanding.
Yeah. Yeah, actually it's interesting. I was watching a clip. Matt Rife, you know that comedian? He's kind of controversial, but he he always acknowledges his audience. And I was just watching a clip where he had a couple who were both in wheelchairs. And then there was another person in a wheelchair across the room, and he was just like, I'm so glad you guys are here. And I love that that was part of the clips that they were highlighting, because we should be glad that they are here. We, like I said, we it's a whole world of people that you need to
Right.
know, that you
Right.
want to
And that
know.
and that for some reason, for some unfortunate circumstance, a policy, a practice, a procedure, a staircase, for some reason, folks with disabilities have always been excluded. And
Yeah.
it's our job now to figure out how to welcome our whole human family into our sites and not make these moments maybe where passively, unintentionally, we are excluding or segregating people with disabilities.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think, as you said about awareness, like once we raise that awareness, then we often have the opportunity to create space where people with disabilities don't have to disclose their disability or be accommodated. Everyone can just come in, enjoy the experience, and leave. And that's what I refer to as radical inclusion. It's radical, this idea that everyone can just come, enjoy, and go.
And what we're talking about is independent, right?
Right.
Allowing people their independence when they're having these experiences, or these uh, visiting these organizations, or going to a show. I mean, isn't that what everybody wants?
Right? To just experience it the way that they want to experience it
Yes.
and have the autonomy to do so. I think
Yeah.
that's totally right. And um, I often, I, I think that when we think about what we're supposed to do in terms of accessibility, we often think about the Americans with Disabilities Act. And the ADA offers us really great guidance for what we can do to make accessible spaces. But most importantly, the ADA is a civil rights law. And the major tenets of the civil rights law have nothing to do with door widths and counter heights and seating areas, right? The major tenets are things like equal participation, independence, self sufficiency. And so anything that we're doing to create independent or equal spaces is actually doing more toward compliance than our elevators or the scale of our ramps or any of those sort of technical things. Like, yes, please do those things, right? But understand that anything that we do to follow those standards and regulations is just the bare minimum above discrimination. And when we're honoring a civil rights law, we're looking at the whole humanity of a person, and independence is far more important compliance measure, if you will, than those sort of technical requirements. And
Yeah.
so it's really important to think about that user experience, not in terms of the regulations of digital accessibility, although it is important. What those regulations get us to is an independent experience.
Yeah. Not just checking a box, right? Because
Right,
I think
right,
that's where so
exactly.
many people are at right now. And part of that is just that they've not been able to put themselves in someone else's shoes in that way. And I think that's really what I love about you and the work, and also why you were Intick's Young Ticketing Professional of the Year, I'm sure, is because you're having these conversations, you're helping people have, I think it's important that we put ourselves in other people's shoes. When
Right,
Emmanuel first came to me on the project that we were working on, I had all these ideas about what it looked like. And one of the things, and it really brought me to tears, because I realized even my own kind of ignorance about this, was when he said, no, we want to feel the wind in our hair and the
yeah,
thrill and just all of the things. They don't want to just be in a padded box. They want to
right,
experience all of these things that we're experiencing,
yeah,
when those of us who don't have a need for making sure that these accommodations exist, we take that for granted,
right,
right? And I
yeah,
really realized that, and that was one of the reasons that I took a part of this project, because what occurred to me is, I felt that I was very sensitive, and realizing that there's so much more that we can do, and
right.
it's going to take people like you to help us understand how we get there. So, do you mind sharing some practical strategies for attractions that they can implement to foster a more inclusive environment for all visitors?
Yeah, I want to start with something that you just pointed on, which is connecting directly with the disability community. There is no possibility of knowing every experience or even learning everything that you can from study or research. Until you connect directly with the disability community, you're not going to know really what's at the heart of the experience and then how to create that in an equal manner for a million different varieties and presentations of disabilities. So connecting directly with the community is important. And I bet in every area there are local disability community groups that are desperate to go on an outing and to experience your site and then would be very happy to provide feedback. I'll just say that if you do that, make sure that you're compensating those folks for their lived experience and acting on the feedback that you learn from them. So that's part one. Another part is about building that trust relationship before the guest even arrives. And that manifests in information. If you provide information upfront, folks can decide for themselves how to accommodate themselves or how to plan for the day that they want to have. I think for a while there was a trend of limiting the amount of words on our websites or putting up an ADA compliance statement for risk management and legal mitigation. And I don't actually know if that's helpful in risk management, but I do know that it doesn't help a single person with a disability plan their visit, right? We need to be sharing upfront information about what's going on and be honest about it. If you have accessible features, say that. And if you don't, say that. Tell me what is the accessible route and that this route has stairs. And that way I can decide for myself what's the best route for me to go. Make sure that you're marking accessible restrooms on your maps. You're sharing shelter and shade locations, rest areas, service animal relief areas. There's all of this information that people with disabilities need to plan their visit and to feel confident when they come. And that can all be provided to them in advance just by enhancing the communications on your websites, on the plan your visit, on your map, on all of those touch points pre visit can all include a lot more information. And I promise people with disabilities will read it. We always ask, like, are people even going to read this email? Yes, they are. And they're going to use it to plan the experience that they want to have.
Yeah, I love that. I love that because you know why I love it? Because often talk on this show about how do we help the guests make the most of their experiences while they are there. And these are
Yeah.
great points that you're making. And in addition to that, I love that you mentioned the email because not only is email marketing, we talk a lot about email marketing, but you can consider this email marketing because it is going to these guests, but it's a
Right.
touch point, like you're saying, and letting people understand, what how to plan,
Right.
especially you're
Uh,
going to an amusement park for the day and maybe you're the mom planning, right?
right.
But maybe
Hmm.
you're a grown person who just wants to have the plan ready. I mean,
Right.
we all plan our Disney day, right? So
Exactly. And what am I going to bring and where am I going to put it and what are we going to eat? And that can all be a part of designing and crafting the experience that you want to have. But for example, if you have rules like you can't have outside food and drink, and then you have information like what is the menu and what are the allergens. I can now plan for not bringing my own food, but perhaps participate just like everyone else in the food that you have available. But if you don't tell me the information about allergens or if you don't tell me the information about the menu, I can't make those choices. Instead, I'm going to advocate for bringing my own food because that's security for me. And so that's what I mean by information equals trust. If I know that you have, let's say, a gluten free option and I'm going to be able to eat for the day, then I know that this is a great place for me and I'm going to feel like I belong.
yeah, I love that. I love that. And these are very simple things. These are things that everyone
Doesn't
watching
cost
today can
anything.
take action on right
Yeah,
away.
right.
What are some unique considerations for creating an inclusive experience in a diverse setting like an attraction? Specifically, yeah, our audience tends to be theme parks, water parks, festivals,
Right.
um, uh, a lot of outdoor attractions. Are there any unique considerations that you can think of? And you just gave us a few, but I just want to make
Yeah.
sure that we leave the stage open for you to Give us all the good stuff.
Totally. One of the things that we talk about a lot at Outreach is what we call affirmational space, or the affirmational model of disability. And that's the idea that the space is designed with disability in mind, not designed for non disabled people and then adapted for disability. And so some people might call that universal design or inclusive design, but basically it's the idea that disability has already been considered in this space. People with disabilities are welcome, and we are not prepared to adapt, but just prepared to enjoy. Um, and so, one example of that is a park I recently read a quick article about called Morgan's World, where everything in the park is designed for disability, and the adaptation is for non disabled people. Or I was talking with a colleague recently about trails and park spaces, and she told me about a park space that has a very popular vista, like an overlook. And on the railing of the overlook is a description of the view in Braille, so that me and my friend who is blind can stand in the same space in the same time and have the same experience. And so
Yeah.
that's what we mean by affirmational space, spaces that are designed for people with disabilities. You mentioned about your film where there's a person who is deaf, and that most of the film is in ASL. And so if I'm a deaf individual and I'm watching that film, that's made for me and adapted for everyone else. And I think that's really what the heart of affirmational space is. How can we make disabled space and really create that true sense of belonging in those spaces? Um, I work with an organization that recently did an art installation where there's a set of swings and everyone can swing, but one particular swing has a wheelchair lock. And so we can all swing
Hmm.
together.
I love
And
that.
right. Or, and the last example I'll give is there's this museum in Boston that has a bench. It's a rest bench. And it's designed by an artist. I can't remember their name, but there's words on the bench that say, "Museums are hard on my body. Rest here if you agree." And that lets me know that I'm encouraged to rest. I'm encouraged to take the time and space to honor my body in the moment. And that's as much a part of the experience as walking around the museum is resting here and being a part of that art space. So, unique to attractions and parks, we have the opportunity to design spaces that are for disabled people and affirmationally say that the world includes disability. And so this world we've created includes disability. And then people can really feel like they belong.
Yeah. And that's so simple when you really think about it. And it's simple, obtainable, something everybody can take action on right
Right.
now. Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about ticketing systems, seeing as that's what we do here at
Yeah.
Game Master. But
Right.
I am curious, when designing ticketing systems, queue lines, exhibits, ride experiences, what key considerations should be prioritized to ensure accessibility to all? And I know that we did touch a little bit on communication
Yeah,
for
I think that's
planning,
gonna be my answer, yeah, is,
right?
in the ADA, we have this concept called effective communication, but we can also in customer service call it flexible communication, but it's the methods that we decide in our policy are going to be our communication methods, and then we ask our guests to conform to those methods, rather than providing multiple methods so people can receive the information the way that they want. So in your purchase path, in your queue, anywhere that the guest might be, we want to communicate with them. And so I'm going to advocate for what we call the universal icon system. We see it a lot with the international symbol of accessibility, or the wheelie guy that we use to mark parking spaces and accessible services. Well, there's a whole host of icons like that. They're these small pictograms that indicate services. Probably in this live stream or on YouTube, you have the CC symbol that says you can turn on captions. That's a universal icon. And without explaining, we understand from that icon exactly how to get what we need or how to turn it off if we don't need it. Using these universal icon systems in your purchase path for your contact center and your employees using the same icon. So we're all using the same language to communicate what accessible services can be. And again, so that your guests can independently select what's right for them. In our seating charts for fixed and reserve seating, we often have color codes about what type of seat it is, what zone it's in, whether it's available, whether it's not available. But I want to encourage icon use. If I see the little wheelie guy, I know that that's an accessible seating area. And if I see the interpreter symbol, I know that that's ASL interpreter view seating. And I can select for myself what's correct.
Yeah. No. I mean, these are concepts even I've never thought of. And I shouldn't say that. I mean, we have sites that
Right.
have ADA compliant sites because we understand that it's important. We encourage everybody to make sure that that is something that they're doing. Because again, it's just about communication at the end of the
Right.
day. It's
Right.
communicating to your guests and making
Yeah.
sure that they have what they need to make the most of their experience. I'm curious how else you feel technology can be leveraged in enhancing accessibility and creating a seamless experience for visitors, regardless of ability.
Yeah.
And I know that you mentioned the icons and signage. That is
Yeah.
something that we work with our attractions a lot. I mean, because regardless of ability, you still have to communicate to your guest.
Right.
And so
Right.
I'm curious how you see technology playing a role moving forward, or if you see that there's a need for maybe even some innovation in this space with regards to technology.
Oh, there's definitely room for innovation here. But I think that whatever we're doing in technology right now, that we are adapting for things like convenience or to curate multiple cultures in our visitors, right? Like think about language adaptation. We're coming up with all this technology to translate in the moment, so that we can
Mm,
have English and Spanish, and et cetera, et cetera. We want multiple languages in the moment, right? Add ASL, and you have accessibility. Add audio description or verbal descriptions, and you have accessibility. So some of the things that we're already doing do create accessible environments. I was talking with some folks who work in a stadium about this new concessions model where you can order from your seat, and they're really talking about the convenience, the pre-planning, the strategy. And I'm like, but do you understand that this is extremely accessible? Now we can not have to navigate crowds and lines and counter heights and all these different barriers because you've eliminated the barrier by bringing it to my seat.
yep.
Um, we're investigating touchless technology for entry. How do we just enter without pulling out our phones, or how do we have wristbands that scan? And all of that is so great, and also it's accessible, right?
Yeah.
A person who doesn't have the dexterity to pull out their phone and navigate with someone staring at them, or, just to eliminate those barriers or eliminate those points of friction in the entry process. So, technology, just like automatic doors, were created for accessibility but benefit everyone. We have this moment to universally design our technology to really make truly accessible spaces, but that also create convenience for other individuals.
I love this because you can really think about this from the inception. I mean, if you think about it from the inception of this project, I mean, I'm working on a
Mhm.
big project right now, and these are all the things that we are thinking about. And I think if attractions, especially those that are new, I mean, there are some challenges, I'm sure, you know, with concrete and things in some harbors, that have
Right?
been there for many, many years. But
Yeah.
you've given us so many things that we can do to improve as
Right.
well. But if you're thinking about it from the beginning, it's a part
Right.
of the concept of design. It's a part of the concept of the operation and how you are going to function day to day. It's just a part of what you do,
Right.
just
Which
as
is
you do
why
for everyone.
Yeah, which is why accommodation and adaptation is not enough. Like,
Yeah.
that is what you have to do on the daily basis to make your site accessible, yes. But there's this whole other piece of it where inclusion can start with all the new things that you're planning, or can start with your core values. And so you're creating with disability in mind rather than adapting to the moment. It's proactive rather than reactive. And as
Right.
businesses, we want to be that way about every other facet of our business. So why wouldn't we be that way about accessibility?
Right. Yeah. Wow. This is such a great conversation.
Yeah.
I thank you so much because I'm just in the conversations we had at Intix, I learned so much from you, but also, and I knew that we needed to bring this to this audience. But I have a question for you. How do attraction operators become aware of the needs for diverse audiences and ensure their facilities and experiences are truly inclusive?
It starts with training. It starts with education for me. I think that when we talk about how powerful awareness can be, but then you add education to that. I think that when we invest in the education of our frontline staff, and by frontline staff, I don't just mean your ticketing and admission staff, I mean anyone who comes in contact with the guest. That's going to be security, concessions, merchandise, custodial. It's going to be everybody who interacts with the guest on a regular basis. If we let those folks know what to do, how to respond, what services are available, how to access those services, we empower them. We empower our employees with knowledge. And that is only going to create better experiences for our guests. And not just our guests with disabilities, but actually everyone who walks into our site is going to be better served when our front facing staff feels empowered, that they know what to do, they have the autonomy to make decisions and the resources to make those decisions. And I think that's why I love to work in the ticketing world with folks, because I think I call us access champions. We are the first people that the guest interacts with. And that allows us to control how amazingly positive that interaction can be. But that means we have to equip our frontline staff with those resources, that education, and that autonomy.
Yeah. Yeah. We talk a lot about the guest experience in the attraction space. And I think you are 100% on with the education part of the frontline staff, right? Because that's actually who they see the most.
Exactly.
They only
That's
see Mickey
exactly
every now and then, right?
right. But they
But
interact with your full staff when they come, right?
right.
And, they're giving over to your staff. It's a vulnerable experience, particularly when we think about security staff. I'm trusting you with myself today, and I expect that trust is mutually honored, and when we give information, education, and empowerment to our frontline staff, we really can make that happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's really beautiful. And, I'm curious looking forward, what is truly inclusive attraction and what does a truly inclusive attraction industry look like? And, where everyone can participate and enjoy the thrills, the experiences and opportunities. Where can somebody who's listening today go to find resources on that? And like I said at the beginning of the show, when you know better, you do better. But some of us
Right.
just need access to information. What would be your recommendation for that?
Yeah, for starters, every person in the US has access to the ADA network. And so in your region, there's a regional ADA center that can answer your questions. Most of them provide resources. You go on their website, there's free trainings, there's free webinars, there's conferences you can attend. I mean, there's all this information. But here is where I believe the attraction world, the live entertainment industry, and the arts industry can come together. There are enormous resources within the art world about how to design with accessibility in mind. There are enormous resources in the architecture world about how to design with accessibility in mind. We can work together as an entertainment sector and really come up with some amazing ideas for how to promote and, as you said, normalize, or really just make a typical experience of accessibility as a part of our regular operating procedure. And um, I think I think we're already seeing examples of that. When we all watched the Super Bowl, um, uh, maybe not this year, but last year, there was a moment where the deaf interpreters went viral, and everyone thought, "Oh, it's amazing to offer this visual." Representation and this language interpretation in this moment. And I think the more we bring those things out, the more fascination that we bring to what accessibility can be, I feel like the more innovative we can be in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny you brought up the interpreters because I was just watching a clip. I think it was maybe a Snoop Dogg conference or a Snoop Dogg concert. And, the interpreters, I mean, they have to know the songs.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's just amazing to me the dedication that it must take to be able to do that work. I really love watching them. Sometimes when I'm at shows, it's very interesting to me. But yeah, So Snoop Dogg also, I think, helped put that on the radar. It's important, people want to experience all of these uh, ama- amazing things in the way
Yeah.
that they need to
And
experience
I think
them.
I think we're starting to see artists that are traveling with their own interpreters so that they are familiar with the music
Oh,
and so that they are giving authentic embodiment of rhythm and speed and experience. And because venues don't often have the same opportunities to connect with people that are, maybe they have the opportunity to connect with qualified interpreters, but maybe not that are authentic representations of the music that's on their
yeah,
stage. And so,
that makes sense.
um, to provide consistency, I think we're starting to see artists travel with their own interpreters, which is a really amazing trend I'd love to see keep going.
Yeah, me too, because you know what? It's almost like they're part of the show, right?
Yeah,
And and
they
and
are. Yeah,
they are part of the show. I mean, they're dancing and they're
right.
signing all of these
That's the only access
complicated
someone has to the
lyrics.
music.
Yeah.
Right, right. Yeah,
Yeah. No, that's so great that we're seeing this trend happening, and I think it's again important that we see more trends happening throughout
right.
all of the attractions entertainment space and the cultural attraction space, which is where I think you do a lot of your work. But I'm
Yeah.
curious, we're approaching time. I'm just curious because if my audience wants to connect with you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Sure, you can reach out to me through our Artreach website. So that's www.art-reach.org. Um, Me and my colleagues, we're all dedicated to connecting with our community of arts partners, connecting with the disability community, hearing your experiences, learning from that. And also, we provide training and other resources, and we can connect you to resources in your area so that you can work with your local community groups and really establish some sustainable methods of maintaining connection with the disability community.
Well, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you so much
Yeah.
for the work that you do. Congratulations on the Young Ticketing Professional Award. It was so well deserved. And,
Thank you.
anything that we can do to help you with this mission and the vision that you have for what the world should look like. And I know that we're going to get there. I know we're going to get there because it's going to be
Me
people
too.
like you who are doing this great work and helping to educate people in all of these spaces to do better.
Yeah, I'm so
And
grateful for the opportunity just here to begin the conversation to raise that awareness. It really means a lot, and I am so grateful to you.
thank you, Danny. I'm so glad I met you.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Well, we're going to sign off for today. Thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, Danny, for being so generous. And if
Yeah,
you
thank you.
if you ever have any questions or want to leave, the chat will still stay open. I'm sure that Danny and I can monitor that chat. If you guys have any additional questions, I'd love to have her back on the show because I think this is a conversation that needs to keep happening. And I don't know that we nearly even scratched the surface of what this conversation has. So I'd love to have you back on the show again in the
That'd be
future
great.
to continue this conversation and to help attractions do better for these communities that they might be just not getting to know. I love that you said that. It's about getting to know people, and in this industry, it is about providing a space where we're putting smiles on people's faces. We're creating memories. We're giving people something to look forward to and something to remember, and we can't leave anyone out.
Right.
And maybe that's not my opinion. I think that's just the way the world needs
No,
to be.
I agree with you. I think that, as a person with a disability who was often excluded from memory making opportunities with my family because of barriers and friction points, I think it's so important that we do what we can to make sure that all of our loved ones get to make memories together.
Yeah, I love that. Well, we're going to end on that note because that was beautiful. And I
Great.
appreciate you. And I
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank you
everyone
so
who took the
much.
time to watch us today. And before we sign off, if you are interested in sharing information or being a guest on this show, I just want to um, put up a quick QR code. If you can see that here in the corner, we know that some of you out there have information like Danny that can help attractions be the best that they can be and continue to serve their guests at their best ability. And sometimes that just takes knowledge and information. And you might be the person who has that knowledge and information. So please scan this QR code. Let me know what you are doing to better serve this industry and how we can provide that information to people in this industry so that they can take that. And like I said at the beginning, when you know better, you do better. And Dani, thank you for sharing the information. Thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you next time.